You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristodoulou.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristodoulou, and today we are continuing on with our Best of Free Agents Fit series, and I am focusing on the Seattle Seahawks for this video here, going over some needs they could potentially fill on both the offensive and defensive side of the football. So, as always, make sure you hit that like button, hit that sub button, and also, my Seahawks fans, let me know in the comment section down below, who do you guys want to see the Seahawks go after in this year's free agency period? We still got a couple of weeks away until it actually kicks off, so some of the guys I mentioned may or may not even be available, but I'm working with the list that I have to work with right now. I can't predict who is and is not going to be re-signed, so we'll do what we can with what we have for information. Now, the Seahawks, $34.8 million to spend. That's a fair amount of money. You can do a lot with that. Am I the biggest spend all your money in free agency kind of guy? Not really. I think there needs to be a healthy balance of both free agency, drafting, and even trade acquisitions to really build a team completely. And the trading more so comes down to who do you make a move for around like mid-season or so when that trade deadline approaches. When you look at something like what the Rams did with Von Miller this past season, that's kind of like the idea that I really like to go by is, you know, when you get to mid-season, you're contending, okay, we need to bring in another piece, something along those lines. Now, for the Seahawks, I don't want to see them spend all their money, but there is a couple of areas of need that I think they should address quickly. And you have a pretty prime target on the defensive side of the football here. So for the first guy I'd like to see them take, I'm going to go with edge rusher Chandler Jones from Arizona, stealing over from a division rival and bringing him into Seattle. If you're bringing him in, it's on like a 2 or 3 year deal. From the sounds of it, he might end up being available. I don't think that the Cardinals are going to be able to afford paying him and J.J. Watt, and it sounds like because of the way the deals have worked out, they might have to stick with J.J. Watt, whether they want to or not. They're going to have to move some money around if they want to be able to bring back Chandler Jones and pair them up together. So if he is available, I think this would be an excellent addition for a defense that struggled to get to the quarterback. They were able to bring some pressure, but finishing off that pressure, only 34 sacks this past season, which is tied for 9th worst in the league. On top of that, they were allowing a whopping 265.5 passing yards a game, which was 2nd worst in the NFL. There needs to be an improvement in the pass D. And while addressing the secondary is something you can do, one of the best ways and easiest ways, because you have, 3-4 cornerbacks you may need to run, a safety or two as well, even the linebackers drop into coverage at times. One of the quicker and more sure ways to help out a secondary that needs that, little bit of boost, you improve the pass rush. You bring in a guy like Chandler Jones, who in only 3 out of the 10 seasons in his career didn't hit double-digit sack numbers, and he's coming off 11 sacks just this past season with 5 in a single game at one point. You bring in pass rush like that where teams have to account for it. Maybe you take an edge rusher in the draft to pair up with him to help kind of build towards the future, a supreme kind of talent you can't miss type edge rusher to pair with him. Things could turn around for this defense a lot quicker. I'm not saying it's going to solve all their problems, but if, and it sounds like it is the case, the Seahawks plan to stick with Russell Wilson. Pete Carroll just said the other day during the Combine press conferences that they don't plan on trading Russell Wilson. You got to be in win now mode. And while Chandler Jones is 32, 33 years old, you sign him for like a 2 or 3 year deal, something that is manageable and it doesn't, lock you in long term. You're not going to sign him till he's like 37 or 38. You bring in a guy like him, that's a clear sign of, all right, we want to try to win now, and we're working on addressing the defense and its inability to stop the pass through the air, or stop offenses through the air, is what I'm trying to say. This is a clear way to do that. They have a pretty solid interior to work with already. You have Al Woods and Poona Ford up in the middle there, so you already have a couple of guys on that D-line. Again, you plug in Chandler Jones on the edge, you go after maybe a lesser talent, but a guy that could still maybe, a guy that averages like 4, 5, 6 sacks a season just to kind of shore it up. Or you go after a guy in the draft that would be worth going after. That defense can drastically improve very quickly. Do they maybe need to work on the secondary? Maybe. But improving pass rush is definitely a far quicker way of improving a pass D altogether when it comes to just, shortening the amount of time that the secondary needs to cover receivers and things like that. I like Chandler Jones. I think he is one of the most underrated talents at his position for the last 10 years. I think it's maybe because he's more of a quiet guy. I like him. I think he would be an excellent fit for what the Seahawks do over there defensively. For my second guy that I have picked in Seattle, obviously it is no secret. And Seahawks fans, I feel with you. I am a Colts fan, so I get this. Seattle needs help on the O-line. And realistically speaking, you could literally get a new guy for any single one of those 5 starting positions on the O-line. Dwayne Brown sounds like he potentially is going to be a free agent. Whether they opt to bring him back or not remains to be seen. And if that's the case, you could literally just go anywhere and be like, yeah, I could see that happening. Well, again, with the win now mode in mind, with Russell Wilson more than likely sticking around in Seattle again, we need to get a proven talent in, a guy that, can call can call everything at the line of scrimmage for the offensive line, take command. I wouldn't mind seeing them take a guy like center Ben Jones from the Tennessee Titans. Something like a 2 or 3 year deal. He's not going to command a ton of dollars. If you look at some of the salary averages for free agents, I think PFF has him right around like $7 million or so along those lines. Pretty decent amount of money to pay for a guy who has been a top 10 center the last 3 seasons of his career, and overall through his entirety of his career has been very good, especially when blocking for the pass. He has 5,221 pass blocking attempts, and he's only allowed 26 sacks. That's about a sack every 200 snaps when you're dropping back to defend the pass. So, what better way to start rebuilding the O-line than work with the guy who essentially leads and calls calls everything from the line of scrimmage for the offensive line? I think he would be an excellent guy to bring in, someone that Russell Wilson can trust and rely on to keep him protected. And on top of that, he seems like the most likely the most likely player to be available on the offensive line. Because when you look at what the Tennessee Titans have for cap room, they're $8 million over the cap, which is roughly what you would have to pay Ben Jones to even get him to come back. They're going to have to move money around. And the Tennessee Titans have been really good at consistently building out a really good O-line, whether it's through the draft, through acquisitions from other means. And also, they tend to let a guy go every now and again. I could see Ben Jones being a guy that just due to cap reasons or whatever, they move on from. Maybe they go after a center in the draft or something like that to replace him. I definitely think that that's something that could happen. So realistically, him being available and there for the Seattle Seahawks to take in and help work on shoring up that offensive line totally seems realistic to me. I am a Colts fan, and Seahawks fans, trust me, I get it. I watched Andrew Luck retire because he was taking an absolute walloping behind a terrible offensive line. The first 3 or 4 years of his career, Samson Sattelli was his center. Some of you might be asking me who the heck that is. That's a good question. For some reason, he was our center, though, for 3 or 4 years. I want to see this O-line get upgraded. I want to see it at least start to get fixed. And maybe we're not having this conversation of Russell moving out of Seattle because of the offensive line woes. I do not want to see Russell Wilson leave because of something as trivial as that. The way I see it is you should want to protect your quarterback. And I would also like to see maybe Russell Wilson give up a little bit of money to help build out that offensive line in front of him. While, the amount of sacks he has taken is ridiculous. You can't take up as much of the cap as you do and also ask, well, why don't I have an offensive line built around me? There needs to be checks and balances with the salary cap. And while I understand quarterbacks, they make all the money and everything, you look at what Tom Brady did his entire career, giving up money to bring in great players. If you really want to win, drop $3 or $4 or $5 million out of your deal so you can open up some cap space. Whatever needs to be done to get a new guy in there on that offensive line, provide them some juice and a breath of fresh air, and allow Russell Wilson to be able to breathe. Those who are 2 guys that I think the Seattle Seahawks should take in this free agent market. Again, my Seahawks fans, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. But that is it for me. Appreciate you all for watching. I will see you guys next time.